Hi there and welcome back to another midweek video and some more Adobe Lightroom photo editing. Sunday's video of course saw me go out and enjoy some beautiful golden hour light. In terms of landscape photography, it really is the best conditions to be out in, for me at least anyway. So without further ado, let's get proceedings underway and jump straight into Lightroom. First image we're discussing today, and I thought I'd go back over the last image that I took from Sunday. If I'm allowed to say it, this is one of those images that I really do consider portfolio worthy, and in terms of 2023, this is just the second image that I'd put in that category. The first of those being this castle shot that I captured earlier in winter, although this image does trump it a little bit compared to that one, as I do consider the castle shot a little bit easy photography. Let's show you the original image though. I've moved the camera 3 times to get this panorama, and to ensure the exposure was perfect, I've taken 3 shots per setup. So in total, I've had to activate the shutter a total of 9 times just to get this final image. As you can see, the hills just roll one into the other in beautiful fashion in the distance. The trees acting as a leading line from left over to right. The sun itself was setting far over here, right in the far corner. It's one of 2 reasons as to why I decided on a panorama for this effort. And again, we've got a second leading line. It's this fencing drawing you towards the main source of that light. Regarding the edit, if I can get it similar to the last version, and I wanted to start by cropping because it's a panorama. I'm not going to restrain myself with my customary A4 crop, as I'd be left with just this effort just here. Instead, I've got the freedom to do whatever I wish. I want the left edge nice and tight to the bench, and then the top horizontal just along the very far ridgeline here. Don't want to cut out any of that cloud over on the right. It's the only thing that really adds drama and atmosphere to the sky. Of course, we've got some beautiful colours, but it's that cloud that just stops it from being a bit flat. It's really frustrating because when I arrived on this location, there was some lovely wispy cloud coverage all across this sky. Unfortunately, by the time sunset had arrived, it had all gone to the left and the right. It wasn't in the shot, so I lost that opportunity. So from what I got to witness that evening, this shot could actually have been even better in my opinion. Next, we want to darken the highlights as much as possible, along with bringing out colour in the contrast. Here we go, just like that. Just bringing out the detail in the sky with those beautiful hues. It's a bit of a softer image so far. Just want to sharpen ever so slightly in the texture. Not much. It's that nice balancing act, isn't it? Oddly for me now, I really want to show off the colour available in this shot rather than wash out the colours by pushing the saturation to the left. To do that, I am going to still adjust the saturation and the vibrance, but of course I'm going to push them both to the right this time. Not too much. Don't want to go too wild, just enough to show off the scene a little bit more, just to make it a bit more eye-catching. I want to see now what I can do further with the sky. So I've already created a mask in that section, and now it's all about getting more detail, more colours in the prominent part of the scene. Once again, just want to darken a bit using the highlight slider, push that nicely to the left. Then finally, it's all about adjusting the lights of the contrast, the temperature and the saturation, all to get this in a nice perfect spot. I'm going to finish up by dropping to the HSL, lighten the greens and the yellows, really add some light to the important areas of this image, and that is how this image turned out. Next image up in this Lightroom tutorial is something a little bit different to the light show I had available. If you've watched these videos in the past, I like to freshen things up where possible. Just add a touch of variety in the walkthrough because I don't want to start becoming too repetitive, if I can get my words out. In all honesty, this is a bit of a lazy shot from me. Why? Well, as you can see from the histogram, I captured this when I walked back from the car. Well, you won't be able to tell that from the histogram, but I was walking back to the car when I captured this shot. The sunset light had all gone. We were well into blue hour, hence, as you can see from the settings, I was at an ISO of 2000. I didn't want to shoot at a higher ISO. I wanted to keep the noise out of the shot where possible, and at that stage of the evening I really couldn't be bothered to stop, put the tripod up, mess around, get the correct composition. In my defense, I did take this shot around 9:30 in the evening. I'd been up for sunrise, I'd been up since 4 o'clock in the morning, so hopefully I've got a good enough excuse for being lazy on this occasion. What's drawn me to this composition is the lovely colours on display and the amount of them. We've got about 3 or 4 different types of green all over the image, and then we've got some whites over here on the left, and then the browns in the trunk of the tree, all adding different levels of texture in the shot. It's this lighter green here though, nice and close to the tree, that really attracted my eye as I walked towards it. It's one of those scenes where I've deliberately captured because I was thinking of the endless creative possibilities that I'd have in Lightroom when editing. So with the preset selected, let's see what we can do. I'm going to go for a nice simple crop with the left vertical falling on the tree trunk. Of course, playing with the shadows, and there isn't much detail we can bring out having underexposed the original shot. I can lighten things up by pushing the exposure to the right. That's probably the best area that I can do that. But then I want to keep the darkness. I want to bring back the darkness, foreboding and colour in this image by equally pushing the contrast to the right as well. I think this will look lovely with that painterly effect that I love to go for. So to do so, let's drag both the clarity and the texture nicely to the left. Want to drag the haze a little to the right along with the whites, just to bring out some brightness in the scene. However, look what happens to the whites if we try to adjust the overall saturation and vibrance. Just makes it a little bit more blue, doesn't it? It has a hint of blue, and we want to get that white back. It means I want to come down to the HSL and just adjust the colours individually. So let's remove that unnatural blue from the white flowers, and then to finish we can just change the greens and the yellows in both saturation and luminance. I'm going to finish with an image I've always wanted to capture. I was heading back to the car, sunrise was done and dusted, and I realised I had this one opportunity, so I couldn't resist. Here, let me explain. As you can see, we've got a train entering from the left of the shot. In my opinion, it adds another lovely element to the image, adds a sense of scale, adds a sense of journey across the scene. Whenever I've attempted to capture this in the past, I've never been able to get the settings quite right, especially as the train tends to fly across the scene. I get very little warning that the train's even coming, so when I try and focus on the train, the main subject, all I end up is with a blurry mess. On this occasion, just as I got to the location, the train was stopped at a red light, so I had almost all the time in the world to capture it. I say almost because literally as I was setting up the composition, the train started moving, so I still only had this one opportunity to get the image. I'm equally impressed though, as a result, that I've managed to get this one single exposure. We've got this lovely amount of blue here in a cloudy sky. Over here on the right, we've got some light hitting the tops of the foliage. Annoyingly, there is a supermarket just over to the right, off to the right, and being a typical town centre in England, there are these shopping trolleys in the river. Thankfully, they don't impact the shot too much. You can't really notice them because I can pretend they're not there. I might even Photoshop them out. Talking of the crop, and the biggest thought going through my head is the removal of this little crop of grass right here at the very front. Although it's difficult because I want to leave the top horizontal on the railway bridge with the left vertical on the cathedral. Of course, had I timed it better, I could have got the train itself falling on the vertical, but then it probably would have obscured the city view in the background, so maybe it's not a bad thing. I want to soften the image now ever so slightly with the clarity, but don't want to go too wild, as that will then just leave the train looking a bit odd and out of place. You can equally fix that by just sharpening the scene by moving the texture towards the right of the slider. Like last week, I'm going to go a bit out of character here and just darken the shot with the shadows. I'm not bothered about lighting up this foreground. However, I do want to allow for some light to remain within that foliage over on the right of the image. So what I'll do is I'll start by creating a colour mask, just like this. Here, I want to just click on the greens, on the yellows, on that foliage, on the tips. Now I just want to pull the shadow back to the right in those areas. Finally, you can just see this yellow and the blue on the train, because of course I've increased the saturation in some areas. It doesn't look right, doesn't look natural, it looks ever so slightly exaggerated. So I just need to fix that using the HSL ever so slightly. That's the end of another walkthrough sharing my approach to editing in Lightroom. I hope you managed to enjoy it, and I hope you learned something new about photography and Lightroom. If you want, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button, although if you'd rather not, that's absolutely fine. For now though, I will see you back out on Sunday. For now, it's bye from me.